Hey everybody, this is First Warning Storm Team Chief Meteorologist Brad Benovich. It is Thursday, August 24th, 2017. We've got a cold front bringing us some refreshing air, but we've got the tropics really starting to perk up with a intensifying Harvey in the Western Gulf, which is going to be a really scary storm for parts of Texas and Louisiana. Let's get right to the weather situation today. Here's our front. Now the front, great news for us, bad news for Texas, and let me show you why. Because the front has pushed through. We're starting to see that drier and cooler air move in around this area of high pressure. So we're starting to see the refreshing air move in. It's going to take most of the day to get here, but you're going to notice a drier, kind of better feeling air. We've got Harvey intensifying quickly here, but you see the stalled front? The same front that brought us refreshing air is going to block Harvey and park it on the Texas coast over the next couple of days, which is going to be bad news. So let's focus on our weather first, and then we'll talk about Harvey. You can see our weather currently of some clouds out there, which is going to help keep the temperatures down for the most part, as well as that northerly wind. I'm going to put the surface temperatures on here momentarily, and you can see most temperatures across the area have generally been in the 70s this morning, mid to lower 70s, but the dew points have been incredibly dry for this time of year. Dew points have actually fallen pretty quickly. Now, in many locations, dew points are in the 50s and 60s. So they will continue to fall into the afternoon hours, and you will really notice a pretty good feel to the air as this front slides offshore. Our next issue of concern is going to be Harvey. Not so much for the Carolinas, at least right now, but down in the Gulf of Mexico, you can see Harvey sitting right there. I'm going to go through the forecast track. You can see ramping up to 80 miles an hour here and then moving towards inland areas sometime possibly late tomorrow into early Saturday morning as a Category 1, possibly Category 2 or higher. Right now, the Hurricane Center has it with 85 mile an hour winds at landfall, so storm surge would be a big issue. And then it stalls. It actually does a little loop and tries to move back over the warm waters of the Gulf of Mexico. Let me show you a close-up view. This is that high-res rapid refresh GOES 16 model, and if you look, or loop, excuse me, you can see these towers going up quickly. It looks like the center's trying to form there, but really all the signs there of a pretty rapidly intensifying hurricane, which is a little bit frightening because the water over the Gulf of Mexico and really the setup here in the western part of the Gulf is really ideal for development. You can see the model tracks here, but notice the intensity in a lot of the models. I'm going to show you another version of this shortly, but one of the things I look at is shear. Shear is really low over the next 24 hours, less than 10 knots, which is perfect. And you've got 30 degrees Celsius water or higher. That's really warm. Not only is it really warm, but it's really deep warm water in the Gulf of Mexico. Just to kind of reiterate the concern here, you can see the forecast models for intensity. They show a huge spike, almost rapid intensification, some of these up to Category 3 strength before it starts to weaken. Now, the concern all along with this system is the rainfall that it's likely going to bring along areas of the Gulf Coast, because as it interacts with this front, it's going to stall and bring a whole lot of water. We're talking maybe 20 plus inches of water along the Texas coastline. So if you look at the rainfall forecast along the Gulf Coast of Texas to Louisiana, you can see some of these totals, 20 plus inches of precipitation expected in those areas. And that's certainly going to be the big concern on top of storm surge. And if Harvey continues to rapidly intensify, you're talking about the potential that we could see a huge storm surge and damaging winds right along the Texas coastline. So what you have happening is you have this trough digging down across the Great Lakes, which you can see this morning on the water vapor loop. You've also got a little ridge kind of out here and a ridge off the east coast. And what happens is that's going to trap anything right down here along the Gulf Coast. And that's going to keep Harvey in the Gulf Coast at least for the next 5 to 7 days. Now, what's also interesting here is if you start looking at some of the other guidance here, we've got a little tropical disturbance. It was an old Tutlow, it was what we name upper tropospheric, tropical tropospheric trough, basically lows. It's just a low pressure that's kind of worked its way down the surface as a tropical low. It's also going to get trapped below the front, and we could see low pressure form here, cross over Florida, and then move off the east coast, possibly developing into Irma at some point over the next 3 or 4 days. But what we have to watch is if that front stays stalled right in here, which I think it will, at least through the middle of next week, we're going to be okay here. But eventually, if this front starts drifting back north, it could bring the remnants of Harvey, if it's still left down there, and whatever's on the coast could interact with the front and cause some flooding along coastal sections of the Carolinas. So a lot to talk about over the next couple of days, even though our weather's going to be pretty quiet and actually very nice here in the Charlotte area and most of the Carolinas. I'm keeping a close eye on what happens with Harvey long range and what happens with this mess. Here's our low down here, and then this little thing along the stalled front. Stalled fronts can always be a pain in the butt any time of the year. Tropical season, they're even more problematic. So I'll keep an eye on them. Of course, I'll have complete details minute by minute, hour by hour as things get developing this afternoon. And if you have friends or family in Texas, make sure they are taking full precautions. Make sure they are evacuating as ordered. I would not stay. This is a water issue, so we run from the water and hide from the wind. So get inland, get away from that water if you can along the Texas coast. And even my friends in Louisiana, be prepared. You've been saturated already. It won't take much to cause additional flooding. I'll see you today at 4, 5, and 6 on NBC Charlotte.